Doesn't it feel comfortable in here? Oh, it's so toasty. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the review session for the New York City Department of Planning, the Planning Commission. Madam Secretary, please begin.
Thank you. Today is Tuesday, January 21st, 2014, and this is the City Planning Commission review session, and a quorum is present. The first item on the agenda is proposed major concession for a 10-year term to facilitate the use of a ball field for school purposes and to facilitate improvements to Red Hook Park. And our presenter is Aileen from the Brooklyn office. That's item number 1, page 1.
Good afternoon. So the Department of Parks and Recreation, as the applicant, is proposing to grant a major concession to Xavier High School, the co-applicant. This proposed action would allow Xavier High School to renovate and modernize Red Hook Ballfields number 3 in exchange for Xavier's continued use of a ball field on a scheduled basis for a 10-year term. The specific subject site is Ballfield number 3. It's located in Brooklyn Community District 6 in Red Hook Park. Red Hook Park is a 58-acre park. The ball field itself is located on Block 602, Lot 1, at 100 to 134 Bay Street, at the corner of Bay and Columbia. The surrounding park parcels include the Red Hook Community Farm, some baseball fields, the Saul Goldman Pool, basketball fields, soccer fields, and some waterfront access. Sorry, talking too fast. It's surrounded by park pathways. There's also some handball courts, a restroom facility. This is a running track of about a quarter mile, which is a rubberized surface. You can see that neighboring ball fields have lights. This ball field does not. The neighboring uses include the IKEA, located right here, a commercial strip along Lorraine, which includes some local retail, daycare facility, some 3-story condos. Red Hook Houses is in the R5 district right here. There's some manufacturing districts that surround, including the M11 and the M31, where, you have a concrete plant. You also have some low 1 to 2-story warehouse type buildings and some open storage, including vehicle storage, in the surrounding industrial parcels. So DPR is proposing to establish a major concession with Xavier. Xavier is a longtime user of this field and the park in general. The school was founded in 1847. It's a Catholic Jesuit prep school. It's located in Manhattan at West 16th Street. They field over 32 teams, including football, soccer, and rugby, and they've utilized Red Hook Park since the 1950s. They've been a recognized parks permit holder for the past 10 years. So they are proposing to do improvements to the ball field and adjacent amenities, thereby expanding the playing hours of the ball field and creating an improved recreational facility that will be easier for Parks Department to maintain for the local community. The ball field, as you can see, is extremely worn. This is due to the difficulties in maintaining a seeded lawn and the heavy use that this field sees. There is, as I mentioned before, all the recreational fields in Red Hook Park contain field lights, except for this particular ball field. Xavier will undertake the following improvements. They will reconstruct this ball field. They will put artificial turf on it. They will resurface the running track and reconstruct the surrounding the low chain link fence that surrounds the running track. And you can see, I should have done that. And they will also install field lights that will prolong the actual playing hours of the fields into the dusk and evening. In exchange, Xavier will be given certain rights to use the ball field. They already use the ball field, as I mentioned, during the academic year through the year-to-year DPR permitting process. It is anticipated that the ball field would be used by Xavier for a 10-year term, primarily for their football team, between the hours of 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. between September and May, and for 2 weeks during August for a few hours during the daytime. Will be subject to the availability of the ball field, and at DPR's discretion, they may be directed to utilize other fields. Although the running track would be improved by Xavier, it is not subject to the concession agreement for any specific use by Xavier. So while they are practicing on the field, the existing track would be available for people to use. The improvements would result in a field that has been upgraded and maintained for the betterment of the larger community. The provision of the synthetic turf and the additional field lights will result in an increase in the number of hours that the field can be used by members of the public. The improvements will conform to DPR's standards, and the maintenance will remain the responsibility of Parks and subject to Parks Inspection Program. Pursuant to Title 62, Section 702G of the Rules of the City of New York, a concession area of an open use which occupies over 30,000 square feet of a separate parcel of parkland is to be treated as a major concession and is subject to ULURP. As the applicant seeks a concession agreement in Red Hook Park to span 73,500 square feet, the project is treated as a major concession and subject to ULURP.
Thank you, Aileen. Questions? Betty?
Are you able to tell us whether this is a sole source or was this a competitive procurement for the concession?
I believe this was a sole source, but I am not entirely sure.
Okay. Could you let us know, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Betty and then Anna. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Hi. Can you let us know whether Xavier has used the field for the same times as
it would be an increase in terms of the number of hours total. I believe right now they use it during the fall only, and it would be increasing it to also use during the spring.
The reason I ask because it's 3 to 6. That's the time that the kids are out of school, and so it seems to me to be the prime time for use by the students in the area. So I'm just wondering whether that reduces the availability of fields for the other students in the community.
Well, it would have normally been, it's teams. If it's a team sport, it would have to go through the DPR permitting process anyway. And there would be a net increase in terms of the playing hours because of the lights. So they would be able to use it for considerably more hours in the evening hours.
Okay, thank you.
It's a relationship. It dates back to the 50s.
Yes, I know, and I know the school well.
Anna.
Perhaps my question is in a similar vein to the two previous ones. Is this a precedent-setting arrangement? Are there other parks that have been fixed up by a user in exchange for a commission? I know that a number of years ago there was a very controversial plan for Randall's Island, which was much larger in scope. But are there other city parks that have had this treatment?
I'm not sure, but I will ask.
Okay. It'd be useful to put this application in context with other parks. Thank you.
Other questions? Rayanne.
Thank you. So I thought I heard correctly where this was for 10 years. Mm-hmm. So what would take place after 2 years? It would be reevaluated and then...
Oh, after 10 years? Yeah, there would be the option for them to enter into another agreement if they so chose.
Thank you.
Other questions for Aileen?
When you say option, would the terms be renegotiated or would it be along the same terms?
I assume it would be a whole new agreement, so they would...
So it's an option for both parties?
Yes.
All right.
Also require, probably after 10 years, return to the City Planning Commission.
Yeah.
Other questions? All right. This is certified, which means it will come back before us. And Aileen, you will seek to answer the questions proposed by the commissioners today?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
I think also a representative from Parks Department is listening as well. So our next item is item number 2, page 9, proposed city map amendment to facilitate residential development and additional protection to the Staten Island Blue Belt in the Staten Island Special South Richmond Development District. It's item number 2, page 9, and our presenter is Philip.
Good afternoon. This application by Frank Sarcona, a private applicant, and the Department of Environmental Protection seeking an amendment to the city map is here for certification. The proposed action seeks the elimination of a portion of Auburn Avenue in the Princess Bay area of Staten Island Community District 3. The area lies just south of the Richmond Parkway, approximately 1/2 mile east of the West Shore Parkway, and northwest of Wolf's Pond Parkway. The proposed demapping would facilitate the development of a new 3-story, 2-family residence on the unimproved portion of Auburn Avenue owned by the applicant and will protect Blue Belt property from future roadway development. The subject portion of Auburn Avenue here is approximately 340 feet in length, mapped to a width of 80 feet, and is mostly unimproved. The subject portion is comprised of multiple tax lots. Tax lot 58 here, which is owned by DEP. Tax lot 158 here, which is owned by the applicant, and small portions of lots 65, 75, 84, 88, and 93, all under private ownership. The DEP-owned lot 58 has wetlands and has been designated by DEP as a Blue Belt area for stormwater management. The applicant-owned lot 158 lies entirely within the map street and is comprised of a largely unimproved portion here that is supposed to be eliminated, as well as a portion of Auburn Avenue located here, west of Minturn Avenue, that is open and in use with two-way traffic. This portion of Auburn Avenue was granted a Corporation Council opinion of dedication as a street in June of 1999. DEP maintains a 12-inch diameter sewer in lot 158 in this area. As part of the demapping, DEP will require an access easement for maintenance of this sewer line. This easement varies in width between 25 and 30 feet in width, and it's located here. It's the area inside this red line. Located within this easement area is the primary access way for lot 88. This access way is a paved drive ranging in width from 15 feet to 35 feet. This paved drive has served as the property's main vehicular access way for many years without any formal rights-of-way or easements. The access easement granted to DEP will also grant rights of ingress and egress to the owner of Lot 88, and the applicant proposes to construct a 14-foot wide asphalt driveway within this easement area that would serve both Lot 88 and the new residential development.
Philip, could you just talk a bit about what the proposed development massing is?
The proposed development is will be located in this area right here. That's the 3-story, 2-family residence. This is the red is the eastern line outlined here. This is the 14-foot wide paved driveway. This is Lot 88. Driveway would serve both.
Okay, questions? Commissioner Besser.
Thank you. So you had mentioned that the fire department had looked at this and
Yes.
they were okay with it?
Yes.
As far as the access easement and ingress and egress?
First, the access easement.
And also, the cost of the maintenance for the easement, the access easement, is that going to be assumed by the DEP? Or would that be a responsibility of like some type of an association that was formed by the owners of the residential properties in accordance with the DEP?
I do not have an answer for that, but I will get an answer for you.
Thank you.
Other questions for Philip? None? Okay, this is certified.
Thank you.
Thanks, Philip. Let's now move to item number 3, page 22. It involves special permits concerning use, bulk, and parking to facilitate a new mixed-use development at 42 Crosby Street. That's item number 3, page 22. Now, presenter is Joel.
Good afternoon. This application seeks approval of 3 special permits to facilitate the development of a 6-story plus penthouse apartment building with ground floor commercial use and a below-grade accessory parking garage at 42 Crosby Street. The project site is located in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District and Manhattan Community District 2. The requested actions will allow the Commission to modify use and bulk regulations within the underlying M15B zoning district, in addition to allowing for the increase in the number of as-of-right accessory parking spaces. The proposed project was approved by the Landmarks Preservation Commission in May 2013. 42 Crosby Street, which is located here in gray, is at the northwest corner of Crosby and Broome Streets. The site is in the heart of the Soho shopping district. It's 3 blocks north of Canal Street, 1 block east of Broadway, and 1 block west of Lafayette Street. The project site, which as you can see is a corner lot, has 114 feet of frontage on Crosby Street, which is a narrow street, and 71 feet of frontage on Broome Street, which is also a narrow street. The project site is currently used as an at-grade parking garage, which you can see in these photos. It has spaces for approximately 40 vehicles and stacker units. Virtually all of the frontage on Crosby Street is a curb cut, which you could see both here and here. And also in the southwest portion of the project site, which is actually covered by this construction shed here, there is an 814 square foot structure that was previously used in connection with an automobile repair shop on the site. So as part of the project, the curb is going to be restored and that structure will also be demolished. The project site is located in the M15B zoning district. The prevailing zoning districts within 600 feet of the project site are M15A and M15B. The Little Italy Special District is also located 400 feet east of the project site, and that includes the C61, C62, and C62G zoning districts. The M15A and M15B zoning districts permit light manufacturing and commercial uses up to a maximum FAR of 5.0, and certain community facility uses up to a maximum FAR of 6.5. Residential use is not permitted as of right. However, Use Group 17 joint living work quarters for artists are permitted in conversions of buildings that were constructed prior to 1961 and have a lot coverage of less than 5,000 square feet. And for this provision, buildings that front on Broadway are restricted to a lot coverage of less than 3,600 square feet. In M15B districts, Use Group 6 is not permitted on the ground floor. And also within this district, a setback is required at 85 feet or 6 stories, whichever is less. And at that setback, the building's required to set back at 20 feet on narrow streets and 15 feet on wide streets. And then above the setback, the building form is dictated by the sky exposure plane. So the surrounding area within the 600 feet of the project site is developed with buildings averaging from 5 to 7 stories. The area contains a variety of building types from brick houses to office uses, and virtually all of the manufacturing uses that formerly characterized the neighborhood are gone. Today, these buildings predominantly include the joint living work quarters for artists with ground floor retail use. And for instance, on the subject block, which is here, there are 17 lots. And of those 17 lots, 6 contain joint living work quarters for artists, and all, with the exception of the proposed project site, contain ground floor retail. So again, the applicant proposes to construct a new 6-story plus penthouse apartment building with ground floor retail and a below-grade accessory parking garage. The building would be 41,370 square feet and 5 FAR. The proposed building would have a street wall along both Crosby and Broome Streets that would rise to a height of approximately 82 feet, and then would set back 20 feet on both sides to the penthouse level, which would rise an additional 15 feet for a total building height of 97 feet. You can see that, the setback and then the additional height there. On the penthouse level, a sun control device would project a maximum of 4 feet 6 inches into the required initial setback on both the south and east walls on Broome and Crosby Streets. So this will help deflect sun into the penthouse level and conserve energy. A 30-foot by 40-foot inner court will be provided above the first floor in the northwest corner of the project site, so right here. And this is a complying inner court within a residence district. So the proposed building would contain a total of 10 dwelling units ranging in size from 2,615 square feet to 5,441 square feet. These would be located on the 2nd through 6th floors. And then also there will be ground floor retail use with a maximum square footage of 4,000 square feet on the ground floor. In addition, the ground floor will include a residential lobby, which will be located here, and an entrance and exit area for the entrance area and elevator for the below-grade accessory parking garage. So we're located here. So moving on to the parking. The proposed unattended accessory parking garage will be 4,924 square feet on 2 floors, the ground floor and the cellar. The cellar portion will be 3,915 square feet and include space for 10 parking spaces and the vehicle elevator. The ground floor portion would be just over 1,000 square feet with an entrance and exit area right here, and again the vehicle elevator. The garage would be accessed from a 12-foot wide curb cut on Crosby Street, which is 98.5 feet from the intersection with Broome Street. So that's located here. The ground floor portion includes a 17 feet 6 inch wide drive aisle, which widens to 22 feet in the western portion. The drive aisle includes a mechanically operated barrier that's set back 23 feet from the street line, and this will prevent buildings from queuing on prevent cars from queuing on the street. And so when the barrier opens, the cars will drive down the aisle and they'll be able to access this vehicle elevator, which will provide access to the cellar level. The elevator will be programmed to return and remain at the ground floor at all times when not in use, giving preference to vehicles that are entering the garage. The only instance in which an entering vehicle will have to wait on the street is if the elevator has already opened at the cellar level. So red wait signals, which will be located here and here, would be activated when a vehicle enters or exits the garage, and this will notify vehicles if they're able to access the elevator. So for instance, if the elevator has opened in the cellar level, these red wait signals will be flashing, indicating to the entering car that they cannot access the elevator. To facilitate the proposed development, the applicant is seeking 3 special permits related to use, bulk, and parking. The first special permit is pursuant to Zoning Resolution Section 74-712A to modify Section 4200, which does not permit residential use in M15B zoning districts. So this will allow residential use on floors 2 through 6 of the proposed building and the proposed penthouse. Also, residential use on residential lobby use on the first floor and accessory residential use on the cellar level. This special permit will also allow for the modification of Section 4214 D2B, which does not allow for use group 6 commercial use on the ground floor, and this will allow for the ground floor retail. Special permit is pursuant to Section 74-712B of the zoning resolution to modify Section 4342A, which states that awnings and sun control devices located on the first floor above a setback shall be limited to a projection of 50% of the depth of the required setback and 50% of the width of the building walls from which it projects. So as I mentioned earlier, the sun control device will have a maximum projection of 4 feet 6 inches, which is far less than the maximum allowable projection of 10 feet. The setback is 20 feet, so it could project 10 feet into that setback. So the proposed action will allow for the sun control device to increase from the as of right 50% of the building wall from which it projects to 115% of the building wall on on Crosby Street, and then a 119% of the building wall on Broome Street. And so here you can see the hashed areas are the sections of the sun control device that is seeking to be waived. And then the final special permit is pursuant to Sections 1345 and 13451 to modify Section 1311A. And this allows for a maximum number of parking spaces in a residential development to equal 20% of the dwelling units. The proposed special permit will allow for an increase in the number of accessory parking spaces from 2 to 10. So this is the first application, parking application, to come before the Commission that uses findings for Sections 1345 and 13451 that were created as part of the Manhattan Core Parking Text Amendment. And this was adopted by the City Council in May 2013. Sections 1345 and 13451 require that findings be met related to vehicular entrances, vehicular traffic and circulation, and pedestrian traffic and circulation, and neighborhood character. In addition, findings must be met related to the appropriateness of the number of proposed parking spaces in relation to recent housing and parking development trends in the surrounding area. These findings require the applicant to complete a residential and parking growth study with guidelines and methodology created by the Department of City Planning. The study provided by the applicant, which is included in your briefing packages, demonstrates that the proposed 10-space parking garage is appropriate in relation to recent development trends in the surrounding area. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Questions for Joel? Anyone? Okay, this is certified.
Thanks, Joel. Let's now move to item number 4, page 97, proposed urban development action area project designation, project approval, disposition of city-owned property, and an acquisition of property to facilitate a mixed-use development at 492 St. Nicholas Avenue. Our presenter is Calvin. Once again, that's item number 4, page 97.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is an application by HPD seeking to acquire privately owned property, a UDAP designation, project approval, and the disposition of property to facilitate the development of a new 10-story mixed-use building containing both residential and commercial uses in Manhattan Community District 10. The subject site is located on the southeast corner of St. Nicholas Avenue, west 135th Street, and is located within our R8 C14 zoning district. The site is comprised of one privately owned lot, which is currently vacant. Lot 54 was included in 1992, was included in an amendment to the St. Nicholas Park Urban Renewal Plan, as well as related to an application which was a zoning map changed to map CA to establish a C14 in an existing R8. As part of that amendment to the Urban Renewal Plan, the uses were restricted for lots 54 and the two adjacent lots, 56 and 58, to residential, commercial, community facility uses, and open public spaces. The two adjacent lots, 56 and 58, were rehabbed by Greater Harlem Development Corporation for residential uses, and at the support of the community and the request of the community, Lot 54 was asked to remain vacant to preserve and protect a mural that was on the adjacent lots building, 56, as shown in this picture here. It was a mural that was done by a Harlem artist, and they wanted to protect that, so they asked that that lot remain vacant. However, due to necessary repairs, waterproofing of the building, the mural was eventually eliminated. So it was removed. The proposed site is located within R8 C14 commercial overlay. The R8 is regulated by height factor and has a maximum residential FAR of 6.02 Or if you build to the quality housing standards or are located next to a wide street, you can go up to as much as 7.2 for residential uses. The maximum community facility FAR is 6.5, and commercial overlays mapped in these districts have a maximum FAR of 2. The surrounding area is basically residential. The major commercial corridors along Frederick Douglass Boulevard and West 135th Street, mapping that C14 commercial overlay along with this established C46, created this commercial corridor that extends all the way to St. Nicholas Avenue. As we can see, as shown in the pictures, this is the adjacent building, lot 56, which had the mule, and here is a vacant lot. You have a 3-story church that's directly adjacent along West 135th Street, that's adjacent to the site. And then even a little more east, you'll have Shriver's Garden, which is a 12-story building. You have St. Nicholas Park that's across the street, and even beyond that, you have City College. Directly across the street, you have a school. So it's basically residential, commercial, and some scattered institutional uses within the area. The B and C subway lines are directly in front of the site. So this is the site here, right on the street. You have the B and C, the entryway for the B and C subway lines. The request for the acquisition of privately-owned property, the UDAP designation, project approval, will facilitate the development of a new 10-story mixed-use building containing both residential and commercial uses, and have up to 14 market rate units. The building will have a street wall height of 85 feet, and then after a 10-foot setback along St. Nicholas Avenue and West 135th Street, rise to a total height of 100 feet. As I said, it'll be built to the quality housing standards. There will be about 2,400 square feet of commercial space and 14,868 square feet of floor area for residential usage. So they're proposing along St. Nicholas Avenue, one entry for commercial use, also along West 135th Street, 2 commercial entry, and in the middle you'll have residential entry. This is how the building, a sliver of the building will be along St. Nicholas Avenue, and the majority of the building will be along West 135th Street. Just to take a look at the first floor plan, the majority of that space will be dedicated to the commercial space, providing some flexibility whether or not it'll be 2 or 1. The residential lobby will be located in the middle, and there will also be a commercial entry that's being proposed along Nicholas Avenue. And this is how it will look. This is just a proposed rendering of how it will look. This is the 3-story church, Shriver's Garden, and this is looking south along St. Nicholas Avenue.
Thank you, Calvin. Questions for Calvin? Anna.
Thank you, Calvin. I have 2 questions. The first is, this property is currently owned by the Greater Harlem Development Corporation, right?
Yes.
Right.
So why is it getting acquired by the city in order to be sold?
Okay.
And then my second question, which may have a related answer, if, as I understand it, that organization is really involved in the promotion of affordable housing, why is it that this property is being targeted for market rate housing?
Well, because I failed to say that in my my speech. I was supposed to say it towards the end, but I got wrapped up in doing such a good job.
You got so excited.
Let me explain it to you now.
It was a good job.
Thank you. Well, in terms of this acquisition, because it was disposed of with those restrictions at the time, it will be acquired back by HPD, and part of the UDAP, they can't dispose it back to that same user. It'll be disposed to an affiliate. And the reason why Greater Harlem Development Corporation is looking to sell this site is part of a multi-pronged plan to kind of shore and secure the affordable housing stock that they have in the area. They are in the business of doing affordable housing. Currently, their portfolio is they have 117 units between West 134th Street to West 136th Street, between St. Nicholas Avenue and Clayton Powell. And given the rising costs associated with operating a affordable housing stock in terms of Con Ed, water bill, this will help them keep those units affordable, as well as the other plans that they're proposing to do, as these costs continue to rise, just to make sure that these units stay affordable. That's within
other units. Okay, so are they planning to sell this site to a third-party developer, or are they going to hang on to it and
no?
Get the cash
They're
flow
going to.
from
It's going to
the
be a
market
sell.
rate
It's going to be. It's going to be a market
sell? So
sell.
it's a one-shot deal.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that could be another question for when it comes back. But
Okay. Richard?
thank you.
Did I understand you correctly to say that the site was originally acquired from the city by Greater Harlem?
Yes. Greater Harlem acquired it.
So originally it was a city-owned site. They
Yes.
acquired the site. It was left vacant for the benefit of this mural.
Yes.
Now the city's going to acquire it back, give it back to an affiliate, and they're going to sell it and use the proceeds to support their portfolio.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And the city will monitor
Yes.
the
Yes.
use of the proceeds.
The use of the
Is that
money
correct?
to make sure that is being used for its intended purposes.
Any other questions for Calvin? Certified.
Thanks, Calvin. Let's now move to item number 5, page 140. So our first pre-hearing proposal. It involves a proposed special use permit to facilitate retail and gallery space within an existing building located at 104-110 Green Street. That's item number 5, page 140. Commissioners, we do expect a lengthy public hearing tomorrow, just in case you were wondering about that.
There is school tomorrow, Commissioners, so you have to
Oh, we had a snow
expect
day.
you all to be here.
Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioners. The applicant seeks the grant of a special permit pursuant to Section 74-781 of the zoning resolution to convert portions of the cellar and the ground floor space into gallery and retail use within an existing mixed-use building located at 110 Green Street. The building is located within the Soho Cast Iron Historic District within Manhattan Community District 2. Now, 110 Green Street is located on the east side of Green Street between Prince and Spring Streets. This is a photograph of the existing built condition. The building rises 13 stories. It has about 169,000 square feet of floor area. It has retail space on the ground floor, and it has joint living work quarter for artist units on the upper floors. Now, this building is located within an M15A zoning district. M15A districts allow commercial and light manufacturing uses up to 5 FAR, community facility uses up to 6.5 FAR. Residential uses are not allowed as of right. And use group 6 uses, which include retail space and art galleries, are not permitted below the second level. On a zoning lot that has more than 3,600 square feet of lot area, this zoning lot has about 13,000 square feet of lot area. The requested special permit would enable the applicant to create additional retail space on the ground floor and in the cellar. Now, I will direct the Commission's attention to these boards here. This is the cellar floor plan. This is the ground floor plan. Everything outlined in red is the space that are being subject to the requested special permit. In the cellar, approximately 3,200 square feet outlined in the red in total would occupy the cellar. And on the ground floor, approximately 1,700 square feet, as well as another 1,200 square feet, would be converted to space on the first level as well. On the cellar, we would have a furniture store, and on the ground floor, we would have an art gallery. In total, about 6,200 square feet of floor area would be accommodated to provide retail and art gallery space pursuant to the requested special permit. Now, according to the special permit, the applicant has to do a good faith marketing effort. The marketing efforts comprise multiple media sources, in New York Times, The Villager, and direct marketing to industry groups. Despite these efforts, there were no inquiries, demands for use of the vacant space for manufacturing use. Now, this application was certified on December 2nd, 2013. On December 19th, Community Board 2, by a vote of 36 in favor, none opposed, and none abstaining, adopted a resolution to approve this application with a stipulation that the ground floor retail space not be used for eating and drinking establishments. The Borough President, and we also put a copy of the Borough President's reso on your dais this afternoon. We received that over the weekend. The Borough President's reso basically approved this application with conditions. And in her resolution, the Borough President stated, and I quote, that the Manhattan Borough President recommends conditional approval to grant a special permit pursuant to Section 74-781, contingent on the applicant following through on its commitment to not lease the space to an eating or drinking establishment. Attached to the Borough President's recommendation is a letter from the applicant basically underscoring their commitment not to put eating or drinking establishments within the retail space on the ground floor.
Thank you, Edwin. Questions? Questions? Rayanne?
As far as the coffee shop that currently exists, they're not objecting to that coffee shop that's currently there. They're just stating that they would not like any further establishments.
That's correct.
Thanks.
Other questions? Okay, this is on for public hearing tomorrow, right?
Yes.
Okay.
A public hearing tomorrow.
Thanks, Edwin. Edwin also has the next item, item number 6, page 177, also a Manhattan pre-hearing application involving 2 special permits, both use and bulk special permits to facilitate a mixed-use building located at 688 Broadway. That's item number 6, page 177.
By the way, does everyone have the memo from Edwin Marshall dated January 17th regarding 688 Broadway? Everybody get that? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, so this is the second application before the Commission for pre-hearing review. The applicant seeks the grant of 2 cities planning commission special permits pursuant to Section 74-712A and Section 74-712B of the zoning resolution to facilitate the development of a mixed residential commercial building at 688 Broadway. The project site is located within a NoHo Historic District within Manhattan Community District 2. Now, the requested action would enable the Commission to modify use and bulk regulations of the underlying M15B district to allow the applicant to develop residential use and retail below the second level on the project site and enable the proposed building street wall to rise above the maximum allowable base height and encroach within the required setback distance. So 688 Broadway is located on the east side of Broadway between East 4th Street and Great Jones Street. This is the development site outlined in the black tape. It comprises 2 lots. There's a lot that has about 50 square feet that's periodically is a flea market. Also a portion of Great Jones Alley behind the back of that lot, and you can enter that from Great Jones Street. This is a photograph of the existing built condition. Photograph of the existing built condition. This is the lot right here. The lot again is used periodically as a flea market. It's abutted to the north by the Silk Building, which is a 12-story building which has commercial offices or commercial use on floors 1 through 6, and has joint living work quarter for artist space located on floors 7 through 12. The site is also abutted to the south by Zacky's, which is a 2-story department store. Behind that, you have an alley. This is Great Jones Alley, and these are some of the views you see from there. walking you through the photo board. This is looking south along Great Jones Alley, so you're standing here, you're looking this way. This is looking from the entry at Great Jones Street, looking north. This is what you see. This is standing in Great Jones Alley, so you're standing here and you're looking south. This is what you see. This is another image looking south from towards Great Jones Street on the alley, standing here looking this way. This is Great Jones Street, which is located right here, and you can see the alley, which is gated. Here's another view of the alley, and this is the buildings on either side of the alley, and here the gate is open as well. Now, Great Jones Alley is 20 feet wide and is subject to an agreement between the adjacent property owners that requires it to remain open and accessible to the owners of these properties. The alley, as I mentioned earlier, is gated. It's accessed by a curb cut on Great Jones Street and is used by the adjacent property owners for vehicle and refuse storage. Now, the site is located within an M15B zoning district. Putting up the zoning map here. Located within an M15B zoning district. This is the project site located right here. M15B zoning districts, just like M15A, allows light manufacturing and commercial uses up to 5 FAR. Community facility uses up to 6.5 FAR. Retail uses are not allowed as of right below the second level. And also in terms of building a street wall, building height and street wall, the street wall can rise to either 6 stories or 85 feet, whichever is less, above which the building must set back, and then the building height is controlled through the sky exposure plane. Now, in terms of the proposed build program, the applicant seeks to build a 12-story mixed-use building. Ground floor retail, residential above. This is a photograph showing the building might look like. You see the adjoining silk building, as well as Zaxby's on the other side. The building would rise you can't see the setback above here. I'll show it in section. But the building rises to 131 feet, then sets back 15 feet, and then tops out at 144 feet. The build program has a commercial use below the second level. We have it in the first floor as well as in the cellar, and the rest of the building is for residential use as well. Now, in order to achieve their overall development objective, they need the grant of a special permit pursuant to Section 74712A and 74712B. The special permit under 74712A allows the applicant to have ground floor retail or retail below the second level, as well as have residential use throughout the building. Again, these uses are not permitted as of right. The 74712B special permit allows the building to rise and encroach within the required setback distance. This shows the encroachment. The building has to, under the current regulations, either set back above 6 stories or 85 feet, whichever is less. The proposed build program calls for the building to rise to 131 feet, then set back, and then rise to 144 feet.
And that setback is what, 10 feet under the existing?
Under existing, it's 10 feet because it's a wide street. That is correct.
Okay.
On November 28, 2012, the proposed building design received a certificate of appropriateness from the Landmarks Preservation Commission. In terms of public review, this application was certified on October 21, 2013. On December 19, 2013, Community Board 2, by a vote of 36 in favor, none opposed, none abstaining, submitted a resolution to deny the special permits unless 2 conditions were met. I'm going to read this directly from the Community Board's resolution. One, that the pre-2009 zoning lot is restored and the zoning calculations for the proposed building are based on the zoning lot as it existed prior to December 15, 2003. Basically, the Community Board is saying that the zoning lot should only comprise this portion right here, which is 5,400 square feet, and not include Great Jones Alley. Also, the Community Board, in their resolution, said that agreements are executed with the owners of other properties privileged to use the alley, including 686 and 684, which abut the project site, specifying work to be performed affecting the property held in common by others and responsibilities for maintenance and security of the alley, regulating its use. Now, I want to point out to the Commission, and Vice Chairman Muckles also mentioned this prior to making my presentation, that there were concerns also raised about lot line windows, which are located on the Silk Building, located right here. In that correspondence, the residents had concerns about the proposed building blocking their lot line windows. In the resolution, in the Community Board 2's resolution, they stated that, and I quote, that CB2 recommended denial of this application for reasons not related to the impacts of this project on light and air or risk of damages to adjacent foundations. But that said, the Community Board still considered this to be a concern that needed to be addressed. So in the resolution, the Community Boards further resolved that the applicant and the affected parties establish direct communications to make best efforts to reduce harm in the event that this application is approved, and specifically urges the applicant to consider inclusion of an air shaft or partial side yard serving as many Silk Building windows as possible. And also, the Community Board urged relevant city agencies and elected officials to work with the applicant and affected parties and CB2 in an effort to achieve such outcome. Over this weekend, we also received a recommendation from the Borough President. The Borough President adopted a resolution for conditional approval with a stipulation that the applicant continues working with the affected residents of the neighboring Silk Building and following through on their construction and financial commitments necessary to mitigate adverse impacts. Attached to the Borough President's resolution is a letter from the applicant indicating their commitment to continue to dialogue with the Silk Building residents to work with them to resolve the issues that they've raised during the public review process. We expect that the residents from the Silk Building will be at the public hearing, and they will offer testimony to support the correspondence that you received over the weekend.
Okay, thank you, Edwin. Orlando.
Yes. Edwin, thank you for your presentation. We received some documentation from the shareholders over at the Silk Building, and you addressed one of the concerns, which was the blocking up of the 27 large-scale windows and the through-the-wall AC units. They also have point number 2 that discusses the zoning that includes the square footage in the jointly owned alley to increase the building square footage, so if you can talk to that. And secondly, they also talk about the underpinning, which we know is a construction means and methods. Can you just touch on that?
Sure. In terms of the zoning lot, actually the construction site or the zoning lot comprises an existing zoning lot, which is where the flea market is located, and Great Jones Alley basically comprises tax lots. So basically, they're expanding their zoning lot to include these tax lots that comprise Great Jones Alley. We've had conversations internally about that. We believe that this project site meets the conditions of the special permit, that the entire site can be used for development, that development rights from the alley can be used to calculate the total development rights for the project as they envision it to be built. Does that answer your question, sir?
It does.
Okay. And the second question, sir? I forgot the second question.
The second question was the issue of underpinning and means and methods and concerns about cracks and other things of the landmark building. But I mean, that's more of a statement, because I'm sure that who's constructing this will take the appropriate means and methods to make sure that there are mitigations to try and not have the issue, the building have issues and cracks.
Yeah, and it's our understanding that the applicant's engineer will be working with the residents of the Silk Building to address those issues as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Reade.
Thank you, Edwin. So if you can just, I know of Great Jones Alley. I don't know the specifics of it regarding, is it made up of, it's privately owned, obviously, and it's made up of multiple tax lots?
Yes.
And if I understand you correctly, they're creating a zoning lot, taking portions of the other tax lots. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So they're not taking the entire tax lots, they're just taking portions.
Just a portion of it. 'Cause you can
and I'm assuming, though, that none of the other buildings use the FAR generated by those that area.
No.
Okay.
No, and I also want to point out that Great Jones Alley is not a map street.
Right.
So it's just basically tax lots, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Anna?
Yes, I guess I have lot line windows are obviously the topic du jour here. And I have a question about both the north and the south. So is it correct that the lot line windows and ventilation grills in the Silk building, those are not legally required? I mean, they're there, obviously, and this will have a huge impact on the interior of the Silk building, but what is their legal status?
On the south side, you mean?
On the south side, no, on the, yes, to the north of the proposed building, on the
Right.
south side of the Silk building. Those, right.
Yeah, it's a little bit of background. There are 55 joint living work quarter for artist units in this building. Those units were facilitated through a BSA discretionary action in 1981. The windows that provide the legal light and air for the habitable space for those joint living work quarters for artist units are on Broadway as well as around the corner on East 4th Street. These lot line windows were not part of that legal light and air requirement, or would not meet the legal light and air requirement. Since the 1981 grant of the BSA permits to allow the joint living work quarter for art spaces to be placed here, and you'll see this in your correspondence, there's been a number of subdivisions within the building that were not there at the time of the 1981 grant. So, as a result, some of those units are dependent on those lot line windows for light and air. But that was not part of the BSA.
Okay, but the legal status of those windows hasn't changed?
No.
Okay. And then a little ironically, I notice in the elevations in the briefing packet, it looks as if this new development is proposing some lot line windows on the south. And so my question is, the Zacky's building at the moment is pretty small.
Yeah.
But are we setting up a situation where the same thing could happen again in this new building? It's on page 196 of our briefing packet.
Okay. Yeah, I see.
And we've got lot line windows starting at the 6th floor.
I see.
Let's let the applicant.
Yeah.
Adam, you want to?
Let me just put that out. Oh, go ahead.
Adam, this is...
So, I would just say, I think it's not, the windows themselves obviously can be placed there, and they're placed, and many buildings have them. It's just more or less, are they required for the legal light and air to the interior habitable rooms under the multiple dwelling law? And that's presumably, with this building, they would not rely on those windows for such light and air.
Well, yes, although we have the experience of the Silk building to demonstrate that what gets set up originally sometimes gets forgotten about, and it's pretty unfortunate for the people who are living in that space who may not be aware that that's the story. And I also realize that this whole inquiry is sort of beyond the scope of this application, but it's still...
That's never stopped us before, Anna.
That's right. That's why I'm charging ahead.
Yeah, and that applicant could speak to the interior layouts and how they obviously will
Okay.
ensure
Big stickers on the window saying not legal. Right.
able to be. I mean, sometimes I think some leases, in fact, however, the documents that go with the sale,
Yeah, of course.
presumably
Right.
would have that.
Yeah.
You done, Anna?
I'm done for now.
For now.
For now.
For now. Commissioner Reade.
Just one follow-up. As far as we know, do we know if these subsequent subdivisions, as you call it, that were done in the Silk building were filed with building department and got building department approvals? I think we should follow up.
We will follow up on that,
Okay.
and the applicant can speak to that on Wednesday as well.
Okay.
As well, we will have representatives from the Silk.
Oh, you will? Okay.
Yeah.
Apparently, yeah.
Commissioner Besser.
Thank you. Can I ask Commissioner Eady to repeat his question, because I don't want to be redundant. I didn't hear you.
I'm sorry, I was just asking whether the work that had been done in the Silk building was done subsequent to building department approvals.
Oh, thank you. So the question that I have actually is two questions. One, the community seems to be concerned with the increase in vehicular as well as pedestrian traffic in the alley. So I was just wondering if there were any additional, safety measures being considered for that alley, for the additional vehicles, as well as, I lost track of my second question. Give me a minute. Excuse me.
So as part of the bill program, the applicant does intend to improve the alley. This is a graphic that shows the alley. Looking here, you can see that they tend to have, accent pavers, some plantings. There is no parking. There's no parking garage back here, so you're not going to have cars driving through here to park or access a parking garage here, for residential parking. There is like a small sort of carport basically for unloading, maybe packages or something like that. We do not expect that there would be a large number of cars using this alley. There's not a large number of vehicles using this alley right now, as a matter of fact. So.
Okay. And also, as far as the maintenance of that alley, I may have missed that, but who would be responsible for the costs?
It would be the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because the applicant owns this, so they would be responsible for maintaining it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Other questions? Yeah.
Is the alley is very narrow, obviously.
Yeah, it's 20 feet wide.
Yes. So is it, and that's going to be the main entrance to the residential part of the building, correct?
Well, they can enter the They have two entrances. They can enter from Broadway or they can enter from the alley.
So I was just wondering, is the alley going to be open? Is it going to be open access, or is there going to be some gate there?
The applicant can speak to that. The gate will still be there, but the applicant can speak to how that alley will function.
To the hours of operation.
Right.
Okay. Other questions? Rayanne?
Thank you. That's actually a good point, because the fire department would need to approve. I mean, has the fire department looked at that section as far as turnaround and the width that's required to go in through the alley and return?
That I can't answer, but I would assume that it would have to consult the fire department on that, I would think. Yeah.
Questions? This, too, is on for public hearing tomorrow, where we'll hear from both sides, I'm sure in great volume. All sides. Both sides, all sides. Yes. Okay, thank you, Edwin.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Let's now move to item number 7, page 214, proposed zoning map amendment, zoning text amendment, special permit, and an authorization to facilitate a mixed-use building at 606 West 57th Street. Our presenter is Carolina. That's item number 7, page 214.
So, Commissioners, tomorrow, just so you know, this item, as well as Domino Sugar, will both be on for public hearing, and we will take the remainder of the calendar first and leave these two items, 57th Street and Domino Sugar, for last. Not that they're the best, but they're the most lengthy, so they'll be last. Right?
Very logical.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. 606 West 57th LLC, care of TF Cornerstone, seeks a zoning map amendment, text amendments, a special permit, and authorization to develop a building of up to 450 feet with up to 1.2 million square feet. It will include a maximum of 1,189 residential units. 20% of residential floor area will be permanently affordable, approximately 42,000 square feet of commercial or community facility floor area, and up to 500 public parking spaces. The project area makes up the majority of the block bounded by West 57th Street, West 56th Street, 12th Avenue, and 11th Avenue, again seen here, 57th Street, 12th Avenue, 56th Street, and 11th Avenue, in the northwest portion of the Clinton neighborhood in Manhattan Community District 4. The project area includes the area that is proposed to be rezoned, which is outlined in blue, as well as the area of development, which is outlined in red. Parcels outside the development, the out parcels, include a 5-story office building on the corner of 57th Street, as well as a 6-story office building and auto showroom on the corner of 56th Street. The project area is in the Special Clinton District in northern sub-area C1. Although this map shows the proposed condition, a small portion of the site is currently zoned M15 and the remainder is zoned M23. The 2-acre development site currently has 2 2-story auto showrooms which line 57th Street and 11th Avenue, pictured here. A 4-story public parking garage with 1,000 spaces, pictured here, as well as a single-story car repair facility. The Department of Sanitation garage is next door to the development site. It extends over 2 blocks from 55th to 57th Streets, and bridges over 56th Street. 56th Street is an accessible road. In the immediate vicinity, some higher density districts are C47 and R10. Recent development includes a 38-story building at the eastern end of the block to the north, as well as recent approvals for a 457-foot tall building at the western end of the block to the north. Additionally, there are buildings, 5 additional buildings being developed in Riverside South, Riverside Center. Manufacturing districts reflect the area's industrial past. There are, again, M15 and M23 districts that are currently mapped on the project area, as well as the blocks to the south and blocks to the east, and an M32 district, which is mapped over Con Edison steam plant on the block to the north. Area open spaces include DeWitt-Clinton Park and Hudson River Park. Just to the DeWitt-Clinton Park is to the south. West 57th Street and 11th Avenue are two-way wide streets. West 56th Street is an eastbound narrow street, and Route 9A is a major arterial road. The nearest subway station is 59th Street, Columbus Circle, half a mile away, and the area is also served by buses. The applicant proposes a mixed-use building to occupy the entire development site. The 1.2 million square foot building will again include up to 1,189 residential units. 20% of the residential floor area, or roughly 237 units, will be permanently affordable to low-income households. Additionally, it will include 42,000 square feet of retail or community facility space and up to 500 public parking spaces. The planned building will be built in full compliance with proposed C47 district regulations. The street wall will be roughly 75 feet, which is consistent with existing buildings that will remain on the out parcels. The 2 eastern volumes will rise to 290 feet, seen here, and will be capped by a third segment, which will bring the overall building height to 450 feet, or 42 stories. The westernmost section adjacent to the sanitation garage will rise to 180 feet and 17 stories, and all of the building's segments will be connected by one central vertical core, and will also be connected by 2 30-foot wide glass bridges that will provide circulation. Residents will enter through a lobby on West 57th Street, and retail or community facility will line the base of 57th Street and 11th Avenue, and 56th Street will be used for loading and service entrance. A draft environmental impact statement has been prepared in connection with this application. Significant adverse impacts have been identified in the analysis of child care centers, as well as traffic intersections, a pedestrian crossing, and buses. In terms of actions, the applicant seeks to rezone the area that comprises the development site and out parcels from an M23 and M15 to a C47 district. The area would continue to be located in northern subarea C1 of the Special Clinton District, and the sanitation garage would continue to be zoned M15. M15 permits 5 FAR, M23 permits 2 FAR. The proposed C47 district would have a base maximum FAR of 9 for buildings with residential uses that could increase to 12 with inclusionary housing. The planned building is also designed to comply with tower on a base regulations for C47, which allow a base of 60 to 85 feet, and tower lot coverage of 30 to 40%. Additionally, the applicant seeks to designate the project area as an inclusionary housing designated area, which would permit the applicant to provide 20% of the residential floor areas permanently affordable. The application includes a special parking special permit. The 1,000 space garage that is currently on the development site is planned to be demolished. The project, as proposed, generates 210 parking spaces as of right. The applicant proposes a 500-space garage with 25 reservoir spaces. It will be accessed from a 22-foot curb cut at the westernmost end of the site, as well as a new as-of-right 22-foot curb cut on West 56th Street. And vehicles, in the case that there's a 500-space garage, vehicles would be parked on below-grade levels 1, 2, and 3. Alternatively, if there's an auto showroom occupying the retail space on the ground floor of the building, the auto showroom would require accessory facilities, and a car repair as well as car preparation that would be located on the first subgrade level. In that case, the maximum number of spaces in the garage would be 395 spaces, and only the West 57th Street westernmost access 22-foot curb cut would be used to access 395 space public garage. Vehicles for the public garage would be located on below grade levels 2 and 3. The 56th Street access would be used exclusively for the uses accessory to the auto showroom. To access the proposed garage, the applicant seeks an authorization to permit a curb cut on a wide street. The existing 14-foot curb cut, again, on 57th Street is being increased or widened to 22 feet. The applicant proposes 3 amendments to the zoning resolution as discussed: inclusionary housing designation. Additionally, an amendment to regulations pertaining to the project area would adjust the inclusionary housing bonus structure to ensure that 20% of the residential floor area is affordable irrespective of the amount of non-residential floor area in the building. The applicant currently proposes 42,000 square feet of commercial floor area on the ground floor. The text amendment would permit the flexibility to include additional commercial or community facility uses to activate the building's lower floors and draw pedestrians to this segment of West 57th Street. Lastly, the applicant proposes an amendment to permit an auto showroom with preparation of automobiles and accessory repair. C47 permits auto showrooms as of right. As discussed, the applicant seeks to include the accessory uses to the auto showroom as well. The Commission has received comments from the Community Board and Borough President. At a meeting on December 4th, the Community Board voted to approve the rezoning, the inclusionary housing designation, and curb cut authorization. With regard to the text amendment to allow the adjusted inclusionary housing base, the Board asked that the affordable housing make up 20% of all floor area rather than 20% of residential floor area. The Board requested that affordable units be distributed through 80% rather than 65% of the building, and that fixtures be consistent throughout, and building amenities be made available to affordable unit tenants at a lowered rate. The Board conditionally disapproved the special permit for the garage of up to 500 spaces and recommended that the maximum be reduced to 400 spaces. The Board requested that the applicant work with DOT to install split-phase traffic lights on West 57th Street and 11th Avenue, and work with neighboring building to provide a shuttle bus to the subway station. The Borough President largely echoed the Board's recommendations, issuing a recommendation to conditionally approve the rezoning, the inclusionary housing designation, and garage special permit, provided that the applicant further investigates mitigation of impacts on schools and parks, and that the number of spaces in the garage is reduced to 400 spaces. The Borough President recommended conditional approval of the text to modify the inclusionary housing calculation. Instead, the Borough President recommended that the underlying regulations of C47 districts, the Special Clinton District, and inclusionary housing program be applied here.
Thank you, Carolina. Very good. Do you know at this point whether or not there's been any response on the part of the developer to the community board and borough president and/or borough president findings?
There are. I do have, with regards to some of the requests that the community board and borough president, some of the recommendations that were made. The applicant is exploring the distribution of affordable units through 80% rather than 65% of the building, looking at the using the same finishes and fixtures. The applicant has agreed to the reduced amenity fees for affordable units, and is coordinating with buildings across the street with regards to the provision of the shuttle bus.
And obviously, we'll be here tomorrow.
Right.
Right.
Right. Okay. Questions? Anna.
Caroline, I have a question that's probably unfair to put to you because I think it goes to broader city policy, but you're first up with the issue, so. And that has to do with the application to modify the calculation that determines the amount of affordable housing in this project. So the basic formula in the inclusionary regulations now is that you figure it out based on total floor area exclusive of ground floor non-residential floor area. In other words, you get to carve out only the non-residential space on the ground floor. This application seeks to modify that to allow the carve-out of any non-residential space that may be upstairs. And I note that the Domino application asks for the same thing. So I guess my question is whether this represents a shift in city policy regarding the production of affordable housing. I know that the same thing happened in Riverside Center, but in that case, the space that was carved out was largely a public school, which is another form of a public benefit akin to affordable housing. So it seems perfectly logical that you would carve it out there. And the other example that was cited in the briefing package is the M16D application on 28th Street, where the carve-out there was intended to encourage the preservation of truly mixed-use neighborhood. It's a garment center building, lots of commercial use, and didn't want to, see the area go wholesale to residential. But it seems to me that, and I don't mean to be arguing this point, I just mean to be sort of putting the question out there, that at this location, I'm not sure that we have a city policy of trying to encourage anything other than residential development. So I'm asking myself out loud why that carve-out is appropriate here. And I guess I could ask you as a practical matter, how many affordable units might be at stake? Has the applicant put out a pro forma build program that would allow us to understand how much non-residential space might be upstairs and therefore how many affordable units we might be losing with this text change?
The applicant will, of course, describe tomorrow the programming of the building and the options that they're exploring. Generally, this text has been used in instances where there is a growing residential community, a large amount of residential development, and community facility and commercial uses are needed in order to support that. And again, in the instances that you cite in Riverside Center, M160. But of course, the applicant will be able to describe exactly what the different scenarios are in terms of the amount of non-residential floor area, how that would impact the numbers of affordable units.
Thank you.
Commissioner, I just want to respond to some of you felt it was unfair to ask, Caroline, so I felt that I would step up on some of the broader, just in terms of the precedent that exists today and where there are a couple of different similar but slightly different types of zoning mechanisms that have been applied in different scenarios. But a similar mechanism was used in Hudson Yards and in West Chelsea in those rezonings, where the zoning specifies obviously those rezonings also include a number of other special and unique provisions, but they also encouraged mixed-use development at higher densities with the non-residential uses not limited to the ground floor of the building. In general, the history of this is that the new inclusionary housing program that was created in 2005 had those two versions where it specified 20% of the residential floor area in Hudson Yards and West Chelsea. In Greenpoint, Williamsburg, which occurred at around the same time, the zoning did not contemplate residential uses above the ground floor because it was primarily residential zoning. So, I'm sorry, it did not contemplate non-residential uses above the ground floor. And so there, somewhat different text was put into place. What was applied in the M16D, similar language going into the Riverside Center deck, and then an analogous provision for the school portion of the East River Realty project and Hudson Square as well. We're there to sort of carve out
a portion of the calculation so that the purpose of the program of providing 20% of the housing as affordable was maintained. That's sort of the story so far. There is another element to this particular text in the C47 district, which is similar to the M16D text, which is a generalized approach to high-density commercial residential districts, not something specific to this particular project, but the issue that was identified with those districts is that you have, as of right, the ability to build a 10 FAR commercial building, but once you put a unit of housing into it, it becomes a 9 FAR building because of the reduced base for the inclusionary housing program. So this mechanism, which is somewhat different from what's going to come up later today when we talk about the Domino project, this text allows you to adjust the base FAR, sliding it up from 9 to 10 if you continue to provide non-residential floor area, but not go above 10 unless you provide affordable housing. So the idea is to try to keep relatively constant the amount of bonus that's being given for every square foot of affordable housing, in part because the inclusionary housing program, as it was drawn up, has an off-site option, and when there's the value of the off-site option to one developer, it seeks to maintain the value from a relative proportionality of the value to one developer and to another developer of the bonus floor area that they're building. This is a pretty arcane point of the program, but I think that the general issue that has come up is that this text has been applied where the idea was to encourage mixed use above the ground floor.
And I guess we're now getting, thank you for that. This is a broader policy conversation that ought to continue, but it strikes me that all of these changes have been made piecemeal in various other parts of the zoning text. This one is going into the Special Clinton District. The Domino one's going something. There's no one place you go to find all these exceptions. They're hidden all over the place. And I think in the interest, if maybe it's time to look at this a little bit more comprehensively, decide whether it's the right direction, and do it in a way that users can find it and know how it applies. Because there are going to be lots of these. Mixed use is the word of the future, and I think we want to encourage it, but we want to think seriously about how to make it accessible for people to use it.
Yes, clearly the applicants will be speaking tomorrow about their reasoning, for the text amendment. And we will have time after the public hearing to discuss these issues when they come back for post-hearing follow-up.
Okay, other questions? Commissioner Battaglia.
My concerns largely echo Commissioner Levin's, and I could never have articulated them as well. But my position is, first of all, that no private applicant should be dictating policy. We should be deciding policy. And in my view, any change to the inclusionary housing, amendments to inclusionary housing that decrease the number of units, in my view, is inappropriate. But I do agree with you. I wanted to go on record with this. I do agree with you, Anna, that if it is going, I don't disagree that there should be encouragement for commercial units above the ground level, but not at the expense of inclusionary housing. And I do think it's something we should look at. But I would take the reverse stance that it shouldn't be amended for it. But we'll see that in the weeks and months ahead, and especially with the new administration upon us. Anyway, I just wanted to go on record.
Yeah, I should make it clear that my own position going in is there's no reason we should be carving out anything above the ground floor. I'm very much in agreement with Commissioner Battaglia, but I think my other comments related just to the process by which we get there. I think we have to debate that issue and make a decision, and I come down in favor of as much affordable housing as possible, but once we do it, I think it needs to be done comprehensively.
I agree. And I do want to thank Howard for getting up, because you clarified, and certainly your realm of knowledge is awesome. But my question, that was my comment. My question is, the affordable housing level, is that going to stay consistent at the 80% of AMI? Do we know?
It's low income.
That's it.
Households.
So there's no variation as far as...
There's no variation.
And we could obviously ask the applicant or encourage the applicant when they're here tomorrow. Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions or observations?
maybe a preview of a question for tomorrow, and that is that I noticed in a number of areas in the environmental study, this project, sort of crept right up to, but not over, the line that would have required some further work, specifically as it relates to schools and I think also open space. The open space calculation, curiously, assumed that Pier 97 in the Hudson River Park is open space, and in fact, that's part of the park hasn't been built. So I wonder if, in fact, the open space, there really is an open space issue here. We know that there's school issues around the neighborhood. That's not so much one for the applicant, but one for us as part of the city to be cognizant of.
Sure.
Traffic and transit is a big problem, and the notion of running shuttle buses. We've approved a whole bunch of. There are a lot of big buildings down there. They're all running shuttle buses up to Columbus Circle, and it's a pretty crowded area with shuttle buses, and that is completely not covered by the sort of technical rules by which the environmental impacts get studied.
Yeah, the daycare and traffic impacts that have already been identified are, of course, required to be mitigated, and that mitigation will be identified by the time the commission votes. With regards to the open space, the applicant did review the facilities in Hudson River Park that were questioned in terms of whether they would be open in time. And I think even factoring in that those facilities wouldn't be available, there was no impact resulting in open space. And again, the applicant will discuss sort of the review of those assumptions and the calculations.
Okay, other questions for Carolina? All right, this is on for public hearing, and I assume that a representative of the applicant is here and will govern himself or herself accordingly tomorrow.
Plowing ahead.
Right.
Item number 8, page 275, is a Brooklyn pre-hearing application with respect to 4 city map amendments to codify existing bridge grades over the Franklin Avenue shuttle in Brooklyn. And our presenter is Philip. That's item number 8, page 275.
These applications by the Department of Transportation seeking amendments to the city map are here for pre-hearing review. As you may recall, the proposed actions seek the modification of the mapped legal grades of portions of St. John's Place, Montgomery Street, President Street, and Union Street in Brooklyn Community Districts 8 and 9. The actions are being proposed to reflect the reconstruction of 4 bridges and their approaches over the New York City Transit Franklin Avenue shuttle. The construction of the bridges was completed between December of 1999 and February of 2000. Community Board 8 voted 27 in favor with 0 opposed and 0 abstentions to approve the St. John's Place application. Community Board 9 voted 28 in favor with 0 opposed and 0 abstentions in favor of the remaining 3 applications.
Let's just stop for 1 second. I think we only have 6 commissioners.
We lose our
at the
quorum?
moment. So we really need to maintain a quorum.
Yeah.
So,
Please retrieve them.
just, yeah. Jim?
Don't let them get away.
Start over.
Saved by the lack of quorum.
I know, this was tricky.
And I did get your plowing ahead joke, by the way.
Are we back?
Brad saves the day. Okay.
The grand entrance.
I'm just going to pick back up.
Okay, you were saying, Philip,
with the community.
Oh, you want to start from the beginning? I don't know.
From the top, okay, it's applications by the Department of Transportation seeking amendments to the city map are here for pre-hearing review. As you may recall, the proposed actions seek the modification of the mapped legal grades of portions of St. John's Place, Montgomery Street, President Street, and Union Street in Brooklyn Community Districts 8 and 9. The action is proposed to reflect the reconstruction of 4 bridges and their approaches over the New York City Transit Franklin Avenue shuttle. Construction of the bridges was completed between December of 1999 and February of 2000. Community Board 8 voted 27 in favor with 0 opposed and 0 abstentions to approve the St. John's Place application. And Community Board 9 voted 28 in favor with 0 opposed and 0 abstaining in favor of the remaining 3 applications. The BP's office issued approvals without conditions for all 4 applications.
Okay, questions for Philip? This is a pretty straightforward application, I believe. No questions? This is on for public hearing tomorrow.
Thank you, Philip. Let's now move to item number 9. It's also a Brooklyn pre-hearing application with respect to the disposition of city-owned property to facilitate the continued use of the school located at 3340 Kings Highway. Our presenter is Richard. That's item number 9, page 291.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chairman, Commissioners. The Department of Citywide, this is an item back for pre-hearing. Department of Citywide Administrative Services, DCAS, seeks a disposition of city-owned property pursuant to zoning for a site located at 3340 Kings Highway, Community District 18, in the Flatland section of Brooklyn. Upon approval, DCAS intends to dispose of the property to the New York City Land Development Corporation, which will then dispose of the property to New York City Economic Development Corporation, EDC, then intends to sell the property to its current leaseholder, the Zdov Academy of Yeshiva Rambam. The property is a 34,300 square foot city-owned lot, improved with a 2-story building. It's located in R4 zoning district, generally bounded by Kings Highway on the north, East 34th Street to the east, Avenue N to the south, and New York Avenue to the west. Yeshiva Rambam is a private high school that offers a modern Orthodox yeshiva education to the local Jewish community. The current ground lease commenced in 1970 and has a 75-year term, expiring in the year 2045. In other words, they still have 31 years left on their current lease. In 1976, the yeshiva built the existing 33,748 square foot 2-story building. While the existing building will remain unchanged with no plans for enlargement or new development, disposition would enable the yeshiva to have complete ownership of both the building and the land. Community Board 18 held a public hearing by a vote of 24-0, recommended unanimous approval of the application without conditions. Similarly, the Borough President approved the application without conditions. A representative from EDC will be here to testify tomorrow at the hearing, and there'll be also, hopefully, a representative of the school present to also answer any questions of the Commission. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Richard. Questions? Okay, as Richard said, this is on for public hearing, and both the DCAS and EDC reps will be here?
EDC will be here, and someone from the school to answer
and someone from the school. Okay, Anna?
Mr. Vice Chair, just given its location and the challenges of the day, might be a good idea for Richard to let the applicant know that the Commission didn't have any questions as of now. I mean, I realize that's sort of risky, but, if they schlep all the way in here in a snowstorm and don't get asked any questions.
Someone is here from EDC today, and they'll relay that, I guess, to the applicant.
But she's not talking to EDC. She's only talking to the applicant, right?
Either.
I'm just thinking it would be a good idea for the applicant to know that there were no questions asked by the Commission today. They can draw their own conclusions.
We'll give them that message.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's their choice, but, they should take under advisement. Yeah. Okay.
We also have a request from DCAS if we could expeditiously advance this application to a vote in 2 weeks as opposed to today. So, depending on the outcome of the public hearing, the Commission may be amenable to that. Right. Okay. Our next item is item number 10, page 300. It's also a Brooklyn hearing application with respect to authorization, special permits, and a zoning text amendment to facilitate mixed-use development along the Brooklyn side of the East River. That's item number 10, page 300, Domino Sugar Proposal.
All right. Good afternoon. This is an application from Two Trees Management, LLC, for zoning text amendment, special permits, and authorizations to permit to facilitate an approximately 2.95 million square foot mixed-use development at the Domino's Sugar site on the Williamsburg Waterfront in Community District 1, Brooklyn. So as a general outline, I'm going to overview the site context and the 2010 approvals that were in place, then I'll walk through the current development proposal, then the requested actions, and then give you an update on the Community Board 1 and Borough President recommendations. So the site, as you know, is in Williamsburg in Community District 1, just north of the Williamsburg Bridge. And the site sits on the East River. It's in the immediate vicinity of the Greenpoint Williamsburg Waterfront rezoning that in 2005 rezoned blocks for residential uses with both R6 and R8 zoning and allowed for buildings between 15 and 40 stories. To the south was the Schaefer Landing rezoning that was rezoned to R7-3 and has buildings about 23 stories. The nearest subway stations are the Bedford L and the Marcy JMZ, about 8 to 10 blocks from the site. The map is now turned north is to the right. The project area consists of 2 parcels, a large waterfront parcel. It's 9.8 acres, and it's zoned R8 with a C24 overlay and a C62, which is an R8 equivalent, mapped at the northern portion of the site and at the center of the site where the current refinery building exists. There is also an upland site that is 1.3 acres, and it is zoned R6. The districts mapped on the site are permit residential, community facility, and commercial uses, generally to an FAR of 6.5 with inclusionary housing and a height limit of 210 feet with setbacks required at 70 feet. The upland parcel R6 with the C24 overlay permits residential uses 2.43 FAR, bonusable to 2.7 FAR with inclusionary. So this is the site as it is today. We have the waterfront parcel where with the refinery building at the center of the site. It sits along 1,300 feet of waterfront, much of which is over a platform. And here we have the upland site across from Kent Avenue. So the 2010 proposal that was approved and has zoning in place had rezoning, a text amendment, and a general large scale with special permits. That development was 2.75 million square feet, of which 2.38 million square feet was for residential with approximately 2,200 units and about 100,000 square feet of office space and 126,000 square feet of retail and 143 of community facility. This development had 5.6 FAR on the waterfront parcel and 6.0 FAR on the upland parcel. In this proposal, approximately 502,000 square feet of affordable residential was required in order to achieve the full FAR on this site. At the time, CPC Resources indicated that they would provide 30% or 660 of the units as affordable as a part of the plan, but again, only the 502,000 was required under the inclusionary and the zoning approvals. So the current proposal by Two Trees Management before the Commission would include 2.95 million square feet of development with approximately 2,280 dwelling units, 480,000 square feet of commercial office space, 109,000 square feet of retail, 144,000 square feet of community facility uses, a reduction to 1,050 parking spaces, but an increase of 4.8 acres of open space, 3.7 of which would be waterfront public access. This development results in an FAR on the waterfront parcel of 5.94 and 7.0 on the upland parcel. So just as a comparison chart, and this is in your briefing packages, the 2010 proposal versus where we are today, the overall difference is about 200,000 square feet of additional floor area on the site. The buildings are as much as 200 feet taller. and there's approximately 380,000 square feet of additional commercial office space as a part of the plan. This plan also includes 1.1 acres more of open space. With the proposed text amendment that I'll go into in a moment, approximately 427,000 square feet of affordable residential floor area would be required in order to achieve the full FAR on the site. This is about a 75,000 square foot reduction from the 2010 plan. However, Two Trees has publicly committed to build 660 units of affordable housing as a part of this plan, and this would be again in excess of the affordable required by the inclusionary housing. So there is a requested certification for sort of a side-by-side comparison of the proposals in context and elevation. So this is an elevation of the 2010 approvals that were in place with the Williamsburg Bridge here and building heights that ranged between 300 and 340 feet. The current proposal has buildings that rise between 435, 530, and 535 feet. So that's the context comparison. The Two Trees proposal extends the streets through to the site, including extending River Street all the way through the site that would divide the sort of the public space from the private development, leaving a 100-foot wide public access at the waterfront and a new public square between River Street and Ken Avenue. Moving right to left, there's a mixed office and residential building at the north, predominantly residential building between 1st and 2nd Street, the refinery building at the center, the new square, and then a residential building on the upland parcel. Part of the reason that the buildings are significantly taller is because of the floor area that is being allocated from the new public open space at Domino Square to the other residential sites. So the overall vision for the design of the proposal are buildings that vary widely in form, with using large geometric shapes and voids in order to create a monumental development on the waterfront. All of the buildings have retail on the ground floor to activate the streetscape in the neighborhood, and including the frontages along the water. Two small retail buildings would be located in the Domino Square. In addition, Two Trees proposes a nonprofit health club. They're currently in negotiations with Asphalt Green to provide a community facility space in the northernmost building. In the Site B, the next block, there is a proposal to provide a 375-seat school to mitigate a potential future shortfall in school seats as part of the project. Vehicles would circulate on the network of streets, and there are generally two parking facilities, one in Site B and one in Site E, totaling 1,050 spaces in the site. Also, the current proposal has the landmark refinery building at the center to be adaptively reused for office uses. This includes 4-story additions both at the Ken Avenue frontage and at the waterfront. The refinery is a city landmark, and since certification, the Landmarks Preservation Commission voted to approve the certificate of appropriateness for the proposed addition on January 14th. The development would meet new requirements for flood resilience with habitable floors, first floors above the flood elevation shown on FEMA's preliminary work maps, which is the best of info we have available to date. And there are a number of changes in the waterfront public access requirements to address ADA requirements, et cetera, and increase flood resiliency for the public space. Parts of the platform would be raised between 3 and 5 feet to accomplish this. The open spaces would be maintained by the owner of the development under a maintenance and operations agreement with the Department of Parks and Recreation. So the requested actions in order to facilitate this development include zoning text amendments, 4 special permits, including a general large-scale development, under a general large-scale development, and 3 waterfront authorizations for public access. And I'll walk through each of these. So the first are the zoning text amendments. The first zoning text amendment is to the inclusionary housing program that would apply to the site. So as a background, the current Greenpoint Williamsburg Waterfront inclusionary program has floor area bonus for R8 districts on the site. In order to achieve the bonus, you would have to provide at least 20% of the floor area exclusive of ground floor non-residential uses for the low income, the 80% AMI affordable units. Alternatively, you can provide 10% of the floor area as low income and 15% for moderate income for households at 125 AMI or less, for a total of 25% of the affordable floor area. And the 33% bonus is available for either of these 2 options. The applicant is seeking to modify these requirements in 2 ways. First, the applicant has proposed to define the affordable requirement as a percentage of the residential floor area only, rather than the total floor area minus the ground floor non-residential area. This would exclude commercial and community facility floor area on the upper floors of the development, thereby reducing the overall affordable requirement necessary to achieve the bonus. The applicant estimates that this change would reduce the affordable requirement for the low-income floor area as provided from 430,000 square feet to approximately 427,000 square feet, so about a 10% decrease. 470, sorry. So it's about a 10% decrease. Zoning for the rest of the Greenpoint Williamsburg waterfront does not allow commercial uses above the ground floor or a mixed-use building to be exempted from affordable floor area. The second modification to the inclusionary would provide a greater flexibility in the mix of low-income and moderate-income floor area allowed on the site. So this proposal would change the discrete 2 options, either 20% low-income or 10 and 15% moderate income, to a formula with a sliding scale that would allow a mix of low and moderate incomes between the options on a proportional basis. And this is because this is a large site with multiple phases and multiple buildings, and so they would like to keep this flexibility as the project develops over time and still be able to meet the inclusionary requirements. In no event would there be less than 10% of floor area provided as low-income housing when providing the moderate income area. So, for example, if you had multiple phases of development, you could have a combination of, say, 11% low income and 13.5% moderate income in order to meet the requirement under this formula. In addition, there's a zoning text amendment to waive loading requirements on the site for small-scale retail. This would apply to retail that's less than 8,500 square feet, and this is largely to eliminate an additional loading berth on the upland site that has largely smaller-scale retail. Then there are special permits under the general large-scale development that is granting bulk and height and setback waivers to facilitate the new plan. The first of which is a special permit to transfer floor area from the waterfront parcel upland to the upland parcel. That's about 243,000 square feet of floor area that would be transferred, and this would bring the FAR on the upland block from 2.75 FAR up to 7 FAR. In addition, there is a special permit for allowing a distribution of lot coverage. The upland block has a lot coverage of 72% instead of the required 70%. However, the overall large-scale development only has 30% lot coverage. There's also a special permit for height and setback on all of the blocks. This is the upland block where the bulk of the flurry has been transferred to. The R6 has a 110-foot maximum height after a setback from a 60-foot base height. The proposed building rises to 170 feet, and there are portions of the building that do not set back as required. On the waterfront parcel, again, the maximum base height in the R8 is 70 feet and a maximum height of 210 feet. The buildings rise to a height ranging between 435 feet to 530 feet and 535 feet. In addition, there are special permits for the width facing the shoreline on a number of the buildings on the site. The next special permit is for a special permit to modify use regulations. The zoning requires that commercial uses be located on a ground floor or a level below the lowest level with dwelling units. This special permit will allow for commercial use and residential uses on the same level. So, for example, on the northernmost block where there's a hole in the building, there's a level where there's both office use and residential uses on the same floor, or in the bases of the building where there's a mix of residential lobby or residential corridors and commercial or office uses. And the last special permit is to modify the location of required accessory parking. The required parking on the site, the waterfront parcel generates 792 spaces, and the upland site generates 258 spaces. The applicant is proposing to essentially swap that, providing 300 spaces on the waterfront parcel and 750 spaces on the upland parcel. This is in part due to the flood elevation and locating the parking upland. And finally, there are authorizations for the waterfront public access that's required on the site. There are a number of different requirements, such as the width of the shore public walkway that are being waived due to the geometry of the street, and a number of design requirements that affect the site. And then there is an authorization for the phase development of the waterfront. The applicant proposes to build the upland parcel first, and then moving from north to south, phasing in the public space, and this would allow that to happen as the development occurs. The environmental review on the proposal, the applications were reviewed in a technical memorandum to the FEIS of the 2010 approvals and are outlined above. The tech memo concluded that even with the proposed additional density and proposed actions would not result in any new significant adverse impacts that were not already identified in the FEIS for the 2010 proposal. That FEIS identified significant adverse impacts in the areas of community facilities, schools and childcare, historic resources, shadows, traffic, construction noise and traffic, transit and pedestrians. Since certification, the Brooklyn Community Board 1 voted to approve the proposal with conditions, 24 in favor, 4 opposed, 2 abstentions. The conditions were that on the affordable housing, that the proposed inclusionary housing text should provide 660 units of housing with 500,000 net square feet of affordable floor area, that there be a specific distribution for the mix of affordable unit sizes with 10% studios, 25% one-bedroom, 50% two-bedroom, and 15% three-bedroom, that there be specific distribution for affordable unit AMIs, ranging as low as 30% of the units below 40% of AMI, and up to the moderate level of 20% at 125% of AMI. There's a preference to provide a 10% preference for seniors in the studio and one-bedroom units. There's also a request to consider community preferences with a commitment to marketing the affordable units to CB1 area residents, commitment to market the commercial and the community facility space to area residents, and a preference for local businesses. That the community recreation center that was proposed have discounts for local residents. And on the design, that the approval should lock in the exact shape and size of the buildings proposed. The borough president also recommended to approve the application, but with conditions. On affordable housing, he suggested to disapprove the proposed inclusionary housing zoning text amendment, that there be a legally binding condition that would grant the bulk permits to the filing of an inclusionary housing plan that provides for the 660 units of affordable housing, and that is no less than 30% of the units or 500,000 net square feet of floor area. That there be 100 units of senior housing as a part of the initial phase of development, to provide 50% two-bedroom units, 15% three-bedroom units, excluding the senior housing, to expand the distribution of AMIs, again, a community preference for at least 50% of those affordable units, and that community preference be expanded to include residents that were displaced from Community District 1 after the Greenpoint Williamsburg rezoning. That there be funding sought for lower income levels and multi-bedroom units through discretionary funding through various elected officials and sources, and that the developer partner with a local nonprofit to prepare local residents to apply for that affordable housing. Other recommendations by the borough president included the adjustment of the design of River Street to be more pedestrian-friendly and distinctive, to legally bind the size of the school provided in Building B to be not less than 90,000 square feet, and that it would serve Community School District 14, to consult with ACS on child care space requirements for the final two phases, to give a priority to marketing to local and small businesses for the commercial space and specifically for artisanal and tech uses, that the developer would provide clarity on the timing of the proposed shuttle service to the train, that the new East River Ferry service with landing at the site would be tied to TCOs for the second waterfront building, parcel B, that car share be incorporated into the proposed parking, that the MTA consider multiple bus and subway changes and enhancements, and that DCP should undertake a future study for the contextual rezoning of the adjacent area in consultation with CB1 and elected officials. And Two Trees, the applicant submitted a letter that was in response to all of these recommendations that is in your packages. And that's it.
Oh, the questions is
Yes.
for me, I guess. Oh, all right. Well, thank you, Justin. Very thorough presentation. Very different architectural statement, obviously, from the one 3 years ago, and different configurations in the refinery where there was housing proposed in 2010. There is no housing proposed this time around, as well as the various transfer proposals within the large-scale development plan. Questions? I'll start at my far right.
I didn't get that letter. That was the response, but I'm waiting for my colleague to get it to me, so that I'll read it through, and I'm sure some of the points have been addressed.
Right. It's attached to the borough president.
Oh, it was. So then, okay, thank you. I guess my question is, with regard to, you heard my, first of all, Justin, thank you. You did a wonderful job, wonderful job. And I think the development is lovely. I said that at review session. I think it's too tall, but if the community wants it, I'm not arguing with them on that point. I think the open space is lovely. I feel strongly that, again, the inclusionary housing text amendment shouldn't be, in text rather, shouldn't be amended at the expense of affordable housing. But the applicant wants to have a little flexibility on the second equation as opposed to the 20% or low. The way it was for the Greenpoint rezoning was that it could, instead of that, be 10% low and 15% moderate, which gives you the 25%, making it a little more, I guess, palatable to some, far less to me, because I'd rather see 20% of the low. But the reason the applicant is asking for that change is so he could do more than 10% of the low? I mean, because what the package does say is that under no circumstances would there be less than 10%. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
It's so that there are multiple phases of development. So let's say on the first site they choose the 20% option, that they're not stuck to do 20% for the entire development. So that
oh, I see. It's the phase-in that the real issue there is the phase-in. It's not the formula.
Exactly. Right.
Okay. And then let's
formula is what allows for them to have choice during the phase.
Got it. Let's talk about, this may have to do with phase-in. The affordable housing units, whatever they may be at the end of the day, if this is approved, will be dispersed throughout in an equitable manner?
Under what is required by the inclusionary. So there's a distribution that's...
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Rayanne, did you have one? Okay, Betty.
Oh, okay. Thank you. 2 questions, if I may, Vice Chair?
You can take 3.
Okay. The first is, these are extraordinarily tall buildings, and if you do a bird's eye view rendering looking down on them, I don't think it quite puts into context of what you might see at a pedestrian level.
Right.
So if you could just go back to slide number 25. I think as of right in the previous proposal, we were looking at building heights of 300 and 340.
The 2010.
The 2010, the other applicant. Right. And then the 210 that you have on here, is that?
This is the R8 waterfront as of right.
The height, right. So when we're looking at this new proposal in heights of 435 and 535, I mean, you can see this sort of incremental increase. And I understand that they're offering things to, offset maybe things like this in terms of the affordable housing and the increase in public open space. But I guess just back to the community reaction to this, I mean, was there really no concern about this extraordinary height? I mean, we had a whole, in the last proposal, we had a whole conversation about the height when it was 200 feet lower. These are beautiful renderings, but this is so much taller.
The community board, their only sort of response on the building form was that they wanted to lock it.
They wanted to lock it in. I saw that. They like it. They want to lock it in. Okay. All right. So that answers that. The second question was about the phasing and Domino Square being in phase 5. So again, if this is one of the kind of community offerings and benefits to have this larger, beautiful public space, but it's really built in the last phase, what is there to ensure that's ever going to get built, to that size and standard? And, I don't know the details of, what the requirements are around the open space. Can you maybe?
So the phasing is linked to the proportionality of the footprint of the development. So the Domino Square is sort of above and beyond the requirements, but it's tied to the Site D, which is one of the tallest buildings. So this is where a lot of their floor area is located. I believe it's about 600,000 square feet of floor area that's in this development. So the Domino Square was tied to that phase of development. So that open space would be provided along with this.
Bless you.
Okay, and then in phases 1 through 4, it's the waterfront pieces? Okay.
Any more?
That's all. Thank you.
Okay. This is to be built over 10 years, right? Is that the in duration of the phasing? Okay. This side, Anna.
Following up on Betty's question, what's going to happen at the Domino Square site until it gets built? What will that condition be?
The applicant will be able to answer that.
Yeah, because it seems like it's such a critical piece of the geography there that it would be nice if there were some interim use rather than just a walled-off black hole. And then related to open space issues, I noticed that the site is largely, well, I guess there is pretty much retail at ground level all around as much as possible. Is that governed by waterfront zoning, transparency requirements and so on, or will it be a declaration? How do we know that we're going to get vibrant street life?
So the approvals on the ULURP drawings, there are some design controls that include ground floor transparency.
Those will be part of the permit that we're approving here. And then finally, River Street. Is it going to function like a city street? Will it have on-street parking? Will it like any other normal city street?
Right. The applicant has indicated that they would like for it to act and function just like a city street, but they can respond to that in detail like tomorrow.
And then finally, on the varying formulas for affordable housing, I understand the concept, but it would be really helpful to have some examples of numbers. You know, if we could have some pro formas of different scenarios to understand how it might play out, I think that would be a good illustration.
Okay, we can get back to you with that.
I should say I share Commissioner Battaglia's skepticism about the need for the amendment in the first place. Although this one is a little bit different because here we have a voluntary commitment to provide affordable housing beyond the amount that's required.
20%. Yeah.
So
Only if subsidy programs allow at the time.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
With regard to the commitment or the voluntary commitment as you described it, I think everybody on the Commission should read the applicant's letter and the specific wording of it because it is qualified with regard to subsidy.
Thank you, David. Other questions? Maria.
Thank you for an extraordinary presentation. I just wanted, sort of looking at it from, if you look at it sort of from across the river and you see, you can see the buildings, what they look like. But then when you get closer, like from the bridge, for example, all the views that we're getting are from either this way. Can we see views of from the bridge? I mean, this is a huge, tall building and it's rather close to the bridge. And of course, the openings of the buildings are facing,
perpendicular
this way. I mean, I just want to see whether you're just going to see a wall from the bridge or what. Can you provide drawings?
Okay, we can request.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Justin? Okay, thank you. This is on for public hearing. I'm sure this will be a very engaged and intense public hearing. We'll hear from all of the parties thus far. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. And then, Commissioners, we just have the added item with respect to the City Island Bridge, which involved the city map amendment and acquisition of property. As you may know, there was an administrative error in terms of the referral. Yes, oops. So we're proposing for that application to be recertified today.
Okay.
Everybody's good. Great. So let's go on to future votes. On tomorrow, you have one report with respect to the Ocean Village proposal. It's a Queens Urban Development Action Area project disposition to facilitate improvements to the pedestrian entrance to the Ocean Village development in Auburn, Queens. Okay. And then on February 5th, you have the Union Turnpike rezoning, which is a proposal to rezone an R32 and C12 to an R5D C13 to facilitate a 4-story mixed-use development. We have the disposition of 2 city-owned properties in the Bronx. And last but not least, we have the proposed East River text amendment to amend docking capacity, parking, drop-off, and pickup area requirements in select zoning districts in Community District 1, Brooklyn. So I have nothing more to say.
Nothing more? No. Okay. The meeting's adjourned. See everyone tomorrow. Get home safely.
Thank you so much. You stay by day. It's really good. Oh, yeah.
10 o'clock.
That I can't change.
Just one spot.
Mom, also, squeeze that. Oh, no, it wasn't, she raised the issue that it was going to be, oh, no, it wasn't me. The reason that I didn't raise this is because I haven't read this yet, but I do have a little bit of issue with not having a lot of two-bedroom apartments. No, I understand.
And I would vote against it. I'm not in favor of it.
Did you consider,
Yes.
what, 7?
Yeah. So it just, it's just that there's, you know that